I'm just outside Gulgong in New South Wales with an absolute legend of a farmer, Colin Seis. Colin, how are you, mate?
Very good.
Thank you so much for having us out to your family property, mate. You're fourth generation here.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, you got two more in the wings?
Yeah, my son, he does a lot of the day-to-day work on the property, but my young grandson is 17 now. He's just started on the property as well.
Tell me about the enterprises that you guys are running. You're running a few here. You've got quite a diverse income stream.
Things. Yeah, our main enterprise is merino sheep.
Mm-hmm. How many of them do you have?
We run up to 4,000. So in that we've got wool enterprise, obviously, and sheep meat enterprise. We've got quite a lot of different things, like a merino ram breeding enterprise as well. Mm-hmm. Kelpie dogs, which we sell dogs all over the world. One of our really interesting enterprises is native grass seed. Mm-hmm. Not obviously, but also one of our more profitable enterprises, because we just harvest straight off our grasslands here. There's very little cost in it. There's certainly no inputs, no fertilizer or pesticides, and so it's very profitable. The other thing too is that we're also growing crops, different types of crops. Now we're mainly growing oats, but over the years we've grown wheat and cereal rye as well. And also now we're growing multi-species crops. So a lot of different enterprises in the property mix here.
Now, your father was quite the innovator as well, wasn't he? He
Yep.
sort of started the foundation of innovation for your family. Tell me a little bit about his early work in the 50s.
Yeah, in the 50s he was, I'll go back a bit further. He grew crops right from the 1930s, wheat, and he farmed as everyone farmed in those days, wheat on wheat, and eventually did a lot of damage to the property.
Now, he was following the latest scientific advice at the time.
That was the best science at the time.
And this has been a big learning point for you, isn't it? Is watching what your father went through, following the scientific advice at the time.
That's right. And he also followed the best advice, scientific advice, when he changed, when the wheat enterprise collapsed on him due to basically stuffed soils, but also major erosion problems through the property. And it was a great source of embarrassment to him. But so he set about fixing the problems. He filled the erosion gullies in, but he also adopted the subclavis, superphosphate, annual ryegrass, those so-called improved pastures.
So he simplified the pastures on the farm and went for heavy inputs.
That's right. Well, after 20 years of farming, ploughing and cultivating, there was virtually no pasture left. So he re-sowed it all to introduce pastures. He destroyed the grassland. He probably didn't have much choice, really, at the time. But again, he followed the best advice, scientific advice at the time. And he was putting on 100 weight to the acre, which is 125 kilograms per hectare, over the whole property every year of superphosphate.
Yeah, right. So you got a fair amount of superphosphate still in this soil.
There is. Most of it's locked up, and not it wasn't available. We're releasing a lot of that now, which is a gift of my father's, I guess, from those early times. And he certainly turned the property around and fixed the property. He grew a lot of wheat here for that era. And he won
awards, didn't he? He was an award-winning wheat grower.
That's right. He won a lot of wheat competitions. He ended up judging a lot of wheat competitions around the state as well. He was extremely good at what he did, and I grew up with that type of farming. That's what I knew.
That was your paradigm.
That was yes. That was the way to farm, and it obviously worked very well for him. It did in that era, and that's one thing we need to be careful of, to be critical of people doing what they did in any era. They're only working with the knowledge that they have, and in his case, the best science at the time of that time.
And that's true of us today, isn't it?
That's true of us today, yes.
Well, Colin, this pasture that we're in right now, this wouldn't even be recognisable to your dad. It's certainly not what we'd call an improved pasture.
No, it looks nothing like even I remember in my time in those early years. The pasture then was just relatively short, clover and ryegrass. Now it's a native grassland.
And you've got over 40 species of grass growing here.
40 species of grass. Well, actually, there's about 60 here, yeah.
Now, Colin, this change didn't come without a significant trauma.
Yes. In 1979, we had a real major bushfire here, and which burnt everything, the whole property and the district as well.
And you?
And me. Yep. I was burned in hospital for a while. We lost 3,000 sheep in it, killed in it, all of the buildings and most of the fencing as well. So, yeah, it was like an atomic bomb went off on the property.
Hard to come back from that, particularly that amount of stock loss. That must have been just devastating.
Right. Yes, very, very difficult to come back from that. And I guess then I focused on how do we come back from that.
So the next decade was spent trying to bring the pastures back to the way that you remembered them, and you were taking once again the best of advice from agronomists. It got to one point where your wheat yield was starting to drop.
Yep.
Tell me about what the advice was that you got then.
That's right. I was looking at different ways of growing things. I continued after the fire with the knowledge that I had, ploughing and cultivating.
The paradigm.
The paradigm, yep. But then I'd heard of direct drilling.
Yes.
And I converted a machine and then started direct drilling as well.
So you had an old McCormick combine harvester?
Yeah.
And you decided to build your own direct seed drill because you'd heard about this?
Yeah, that one was later. The one I converted was a Conochet.
A Conochet.
Conochet.
Right. Yep.
Yes, that's right. I converted my own machine, which can be relatively simple. And anyway, things were going quite well with those cropping program, but I was trying to generate more income from the crops. We were growing wheat then.
Yep.
And so I got agronomic advice, and basically the agronomic advice was to virtually double the fertilizer, or certainly increase the nitrogen to very high levels.
So what was the advice to go from what level to what level?
It was in units of nitrogen. It was up to it was 20 units of nitrogen per hectare.
Now you recognise that there was a problem with this, didn't you?
20 units of nitrogen is certainly quite deadly to wheat plants if it gets in contact with the seed.
So this was a breaking point for you, wasn't it? You'd been through the fires,
Yep.
You'd tried to recover from the fires using the best agronomic advice, until you got to the point where the advice was telling you to put on so much nitrogen that you would actually have killed the wheat.
Yes.
Did you take that advice?
That's right. No, it was just, it was contrary to what I was trying to achieve. I was trying to make more money, not less, by spending more.
Because after the fires, money was tight. You had to try and rebuild this farm on a shoestring.
That's right.
And the advice was to spend more.
Yes, because we were broke after the fire. We'd lost everything on property here. And yeah, I was trying to survive with almost no money at all. So I didn't need that advice really.
No, so that gave you some confidence, didn't it?
Yeah, I started then to look at, well, if we can't get so-called experts to advise us in a good direction, I had to do it myself.
So you backed yourself. You took confidence in the fact that you'd been growing wheat for many years by that stage.
Yep.
And that you could probably problem solve this.
Oh yes, yeah, exactly. There's enough information out there to do it yourself anyway.
So what did you do? What were the first steps?
Well, on the whole property, the first thing that I did was cut out all inputs for a while, or especially fertilizer. One thing that I mentioned a while ago, my father was putting on 100 weight to the acre, 125 kilograms per hectare of superphosphate. I cut that out quite early in the piece after the fire.
Yep.
and there's been no fertiliser put on, phosphorus fertiliser put on this property for 45 years.
That's an extreme amount of time now. There's two levers that you can pull in farming, aren't there? You can earn more.
Yep.
You can get more yield.
Yep.
Or you can spend less money.
Yep. But you can spend less and be more productive as well, and certainly more profitable.
And you're living proof of that.
That's right.
Because your yields have actually gone up.
Yes. Yes.
So as a result of that advice, Colin, you actually cut back on fertiliser.
Yeah, we cut back on fertiliser by 70% over that 5-year period.
So over 5 years,
Yep.
you cut back from where you were at,
Yep.
that wasn't working,
Yep.
by 70%.
Yeah, we were putting on about 100 kilograms of MAP and DAP, those types of things per hectare, and cut it back to about 30 somewhere in there over that time, but transitioned off it over time.
So did your yields decrease as a result of cutting back on the fertiliser?
No, the yields didn't decrease, but what I did was I cut them back about, depending on the time, 10 or 15 or 20 kilos per hectare per year. I just kept winding them back slowly, which is what I advise people to do now. Don't go cold turkey, just wean off things gradually.
And you're a very observant man. You're observing your paddocks during this period of time. What were you seeing in your paddocks when you cut back on the artificial fertilisers?
Yep. What was happening, and even though I could see change at the time, the soils were getting softer to start with, and we were getting more organic matter on the soil surface. But what was actually happening underneath was we were restoring the soil ecosystem and soil microbial diversity. That was releasing nutrients, and so that was how and why we could start weaning off a lot of this stuff.
So you were paying a lot for fertilisers that were preventing the fertilisers that were already there in the paddock by being accessed by the plants, because you were killing the biology in the soil with the fertilisers.
That's right, exactly. Yeah.
And you figured that out. You were one of the early people to figure that out.
Well, I figured it out mainly by observation, more so than knowledge, although I learnt of that as I went. But then I had some good help from some fellow scientists not a scientist, but scientists like Christine Jones and those people that understood this stuff.
So how much fertiliser do you use now?
None on the pastures, no superphosphate, and there hasn't been for 45 years or so. Now we're still using about that 30 kilos of MAP or DAP, but we're transitioning away from them into more biological fertilisers as well.
So composts and liquid teas and that sort of thing?
That sort of thing, worm products,
Yeah, right. So you're still on the journey, you're still on the pathway.
I think we always will be, because we did a lot of damage early days.
Yeah.
And, we're learning on the go here. There's no, well, I certainly had to. There was no one to advise me at all. I had to learn all this stuff myself until I ran into some people that like Christine Jones that knew a bit more from the science side of things.
Now, I still have a lot more to learn about pasture cropping. Can we go and have a look?
Yep.
So, Colin, this is one of your paddocks that you're pasture cropping.
Yeah.
And this came out of a brilliant idea with a mate over a couple of bottles of Homebrew.
Yep, that's right.
So tell me about this eureka moment, Colin.
Yeah. What was happening? What my mate Darryl Clough's his name, and what Cloughie and I were talking about, and we were tossing around, was it possible to plant crops into perennial grasses that were dormant, living, growing perennial dormants, but these are perennial grasses. But in this case, it has to be in the winter when these grasses have gone into their winter dormancy.
So this was the moment that you decided to pull back on herbicide. You'd already pulled back on fertiliser.
Yeah.
Now you had this eureka moment. If you were sowing into dormant grass, you could pull back on herbicide as well.
That's right, definitely, yes. Yeah. And that's what happened. The thing that what I did discover afterward, I had to get also off Roundup.
Yep.
Or glyphosate.
Right.
Because it was killing the winter species in here, and I didn't want to kill the winter pasture species, the winter grassland species.
So you wanted soil cover all year round. You wanted something growing all year round.
Absolutely.
And you were getting rid of the winter species that weren't competing with your crop.
Yep. And the reason why, there's a lot of problems with Roundup, as we know, but the main thing I saw was wrong with Roundup is that it worked too well and killed everything. I didn't want to kill everything. I just wanted to get some sort of control on what's going to compete with the crop, so that we could grow a reasonable crop.
Now, when you were drilling in your seed with your oat crops, for example, you noticed something else in the drill rows too, didn't you? You were starting to see some native plants re-emerging.
Yep. Yeah, that was a true eureka moment, because one of the best things that pasture cropping does is that it will restore grassland species. And what I was noticing, and Darryl Clough also was noticing the same thing at his place as well. He was doing the same things those early days. And the following summer, after these crops had grown and harvested, we were seeing the native red grass in some instances, but the native perennial species germinating in the drill row. And the penny dropped then that, hang on, maybe we can use this for something else other than just growing crops.
Now, those seeds, as you pointed out to me, weren't planted by you, and you'd had a regime of killing everything except the crop for well over 40 years.
That's right. Oh, yeah.
So the seed was still there, but it hadn't emerged. Now, you've got a theory on why that seed started to emerge, and it's got to do with the microbiology from your crop.
That's right. Yes, it definitely was related to the crop, because when I first noticed this, these perennial species, native species germinating in the row where the plants were, I did what many people do, forget to fill the seed drill up with grain. Yep. And this was a pasture cropped oat crop.
So you did a very carefully managed scientific trial.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. If you stuff up, call it a trial. Yeah. So the what happened was where the oats wasn't growing, everything else was the same. Fertilizer was the same. All the
so your seed drill had only run out of seed. It hadn't run out of fertilizer.
There was no native germination of native plants in that drill row where the oats wasn't growing.
So the mycorrhizal fungi of the oats are having an impact on the seed coating of the seed and causing germination.
Yes, or a combination of many things. The oat plant and the root exudates were feeding a vast range of microbes and most likely restoring the soil ecosystem around the rhizosphere of that plant. And the seeds, the native seeds that were sitting in that area were quite happy to germinate in it. Whereas for 50, 60 or more years, they weren't germinating. No. In fact, they were pretty well all killed and buried, but didn't germinate till that point.
So cropping without chemicals or with less chemicals is the best way, potentially, of rehabilitating flogged paddocks.
Absolutely, it is, providing you back it up then with a really good grazing system as well, after you get the grasses germinated and growing. Yep.
So your success with the cropping and recovering native pastures led to you trying out multi-species crops then in 2010, Colin?
Yes, I was looking for more diversity in the crop as well as the grasses. So yes, and the mixes of up to 10 species.
Now these multi-species crops that you were putting in led to an MLA trial. Meat and Livestock Australia did official trials on sheep weight gain or lamb weight gain. Can you explain to me what those trials were?
Yep. They were merino lambs, and we simply just split them of lambs in half, and we split the paddock in half as well. So, and planted a forage barley crop in one paddock.
So a monoculture diet in one paddock?
Yep. And then a 10 species multi-species mix in the other.
Like you've got growing here?
Like we've got growing here.
What were the results of this trial?
Now, what we measured quite a few different things, but what the more interesting one was the weight gains, and over the 57 days, 2 months, the weight gain for that 2 month period on the barley was 8 kilos, and on the multi-species crop it was near enough to double. It was 16 kilos.
That is amazing. Over the period of the trial?
In that 57 days, yep.
That is an incredible result. Now, the other thing that you've got growing in this paddock, well, the other thing that you've got in this paddock, I'm not sure it's growing anymore, you've got a lot of this dry matter roughage. Yes. Now, you reckon that's actually making an improvement to the performance of your sheep as well, because they're nibbling on this?
That's right.
What's that doing for you?
Well, we need to remember that sheep and cattle are ruminants. They need roughage.
Yep.
We need roughage, not as much sheep and cattle do, but what we do is feed them like a lush green crop, which is basically rocket fuel. There's not enough roughage in it for them.
The pH of them goes all out, all the rest of it. They end up with all sorts of metabolic diseases.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Your sheep are healthier on this.
Yeah, on that. And some people on those crops put hay, dry hay, in there, and it's doing the same type of thing as we're doing here for nothing.
So people might look at your paddock and criticise you for having an uneven, messy-looking paddock.
Very untidy.
But it's actually it's a balanced diet for your sheep, and they're outperforming your neighbour with the perfectly green, laser-level crop.
That's right. Yes. Yep.
So Colin, not only did you get great results with the weight gain in these lambs, but there were fantastic results with your soil nutrition as well. You did some other tests during the MLA trial as well.
Yeah, yes, we did quite a few different things as well as the weight gains. One was we were sampling both paddocks, doing a comparison on soil chemistry and soil carbon. The carbon levels increased by 20%. That was to 100 mils, not deep testing, but also most of the soil chemistry also changed. Certainly phosphorus and nitrogen, calcium, all increased under the multi-species crop compared to the single species crop.
So people who believe that you can't get nutrients just from changing your farming practice for free need to read this paper.
That's exactly right.
Now Colin, this system of grass cropping, pasture cropping, can be used in conventional cropping systems as well, can't it?
Yes, it can, yeah.
This pasture cropping method has been very widely adopted by graziers now.
Yep.
But I don't see much pasture cropping in croppers.
No, and you don't, not only pasture cropping, but you don't see even multi-species crops put in as cover crops with the cropping guys.
Why do you think that is, mate?
I think it's just poor advice from their advisors. Because, as I just said, we can get increase by growing plants and plant diversity. We can get increase in nitrogen, we can get increase in phosphorus, we can get increase in almost all of those nutrients that a crop needs that you don't have to pay for.
Well, I'm going to say, what am I going to sell them if I don't have any fertilisers to
sell? Yep.
If you want to find out more about the great work that Colin's done in the regenerative space, make sure you check out the link in the description. Colin, which puppy can I have, mate?
You can have all of them at the moment.